Billionaire's astonishing test of the waitress reveals her incredible generosity. You won't believe what happens next. Julia, a 38-year-old waitress at Maggie's Diner, had spent the better part of a decade building a life that revolved around her 2 kids and the melting pot of Prairieville. Her world was wrapped in the worn-out booths and clinking cutlery, her shimmering smile the constant sunshine amidst a storm. Every day, she served meals with a side of compassion, offering a cup of coffee to a lost veteran or sharing a slice of pie with a homeless man. While her heart overflowed with generosity, her wallet hardly matched it. On a crisp autumn afternoon, she noticed a new face in the diner, a well-dressed man who seemed to blend in yet stood apart. This man, Mr. Thompson, a billionaire escaping the weight of his world, watched Julia as she multi-layered the act of kindness with her daily labor. As she united strangers with her genuine kindness, he felt pulled into the warmth she created, fascinated and contemplating a challenge that would echo into her very soul. That evening, tucked away in the back kitchen, Julia stumbled upon an unexpected envelope. Her breath hitched as she opened it, revealing a staggering amount of cash alongside a note. Sometimes, true wealth is not what we keep, but what we choose to give. The swirling thoughts raced through her mind like a whirlwind. She hesitated, the image of winter coats rising in her thoughts, her children, shivering in the absence of proper warmth. The bills loomed, overwhelming her. Yet, with every heartbeat, the faces of the community surrounded her, those who relied on the after-school program that desperately needed funds. A pulse of duty pushed against the desperate twinge of self-preservation. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With trembling hands, Julia suppressed the temptation to pocket the money. She envisioned the lives she could touch, drowning out the rising tide of self-doubt that threatened her resolve. Would her community rally together, or would they turn against her, questioning her motives? As she embarked on launching bake sales and donation drives, murmurs began to bubble. Rivalry reared its head with a local diner owner eager to discredit her, planting seeds of doubt among old friends. Amidst all this pressure, anxiety coiled tightly around Julia's chest. Each morning felt heavier than the last, whispers echoing in the corners of Maggie's Diner, casting nets of judgment over her once sparkling reputation. She felt as though she stood on a precipice, teetering between sacrifice and survival. Just when support from those she once considered allies slipped through her fingers, she felt the shadow of Mr. Thompson loom near, unseen yet deeply felt. His scrutiny weighed heavily, a silent witness to her trials. Time stood still as clarity danced out of reach, leaving her spiraling deeper into an abyss of moral jeopardy. Julia's mind raced and her heart ached. What would she choose, to insulate her family's immediate future or to pour out everything she had into the dream of something greater? The challenge of generosity, thundering in her spirit, pressed her into a chilling brink, leaving her teetering between darkness and light, her choices a flickering flame for all to see. Julia spent the following day grappling with her decision, unable to find solace in the comfort of routine. Each cup of coffee she poured felt heavier, soaked with the gravity of choice. The interactions she once cherished now felt tinted with doubt. The regulars noticed. They exchanged glances filled with unspoken questions, parsing through the change in her demeanor. Her hands shook as she worked, the weight of Mr. Thompson's challenge still remnant in her mind. She had always envisioned herself as the unwavering pillar of her family and daughter to those in need, but now she sensed a fracture. Would she cling to security or step into the unknown? The quiet hum of the diner was ostensibly soothing, yet, it morphed into a cacophony, amplifying her swirling thoughts. The cash from the envelope seemed to flicker before her, a tangible representation of every choice she had to make. Should she use it to buy her kids the warm coats they desperately needed, or reach deep and invest in something greater than herself? The after-school program had outlined an urgent need for funds, the kind of help that could change lives. An hour later, while she wiped down tables, Julia's gaze landed on a young boy huddled in a corner booth. His big, round eyes, shell-shocked with quiet despair, sparked something inside her. Memories of sleepless nights, budgetary nightmares, and her own children's fleeting smiles flooded her mind. "Can I get you something?" she asked, her voice soft as she approached his table. With a slight shake of his head, the boy held the crumbling menu as if it were a shield. Julia sat down across from him. "You look like you could use a friend," she offered, hoping to ignite some warmth behind those sad eyes. He spoke softly, revealing a concern for his siblings, who depended on their meals as their refuge from life's brutality. Her heart twisted. Here was a chance to ignite hope, even if her own seemed ephemeral. As the boy spoke, Julia's resolve crystallized. This young life, just as hers, had dreams shrouded in uncertainty. The thought of extending her hand outward kindled a flame of purpose within her. It sparked a profound realization that this was the test she had been longing for, her moment to align her actions with her values. Back in the kitchen, inspiration took root. She devised a plan to channel her dilemma into a community effort, something that could transcend her struggle for security. If she pooled what little resources she had along with the staggering amount from the envelope, could she not create a ripple effect of generosity? Each effort would carry a story of resilience, her story, the boys, and countless others ready to cast aside doubts in favor of collective hope. As the day wore on and dusk began to settle over Prairieville, doubts momentarily subsided. With every customer, she envisioned a launch of grassroots fundraising initiatives, conscious of the potential backlash yet, for the first time, unafraid. The idea flourished, quickening her pulse as she began sketching the outline of her vision. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Thompson, enigmatic and timely. "Are you ready to face the consequences of your choices?" It pulled her from her thoughts, a call to action or a threat. She grasped the phone, fingers trembling, the intersection of doubt and determination colliding within her. A moment of reckoning loomed, and as she raised her gaze to the diner, all souls gathered within felt intertwined in her own fate. The moment had arrived to make things right, not just for herself but for all those enveloped in her story. Would she echo through the tumult of judgment and weave a different reality, or would fear anchor her back? Ahead of her lay decisions entwined with her deepest desires and daunting potential. Julia took a deep breath, preparing to respond, knowing this was just the beginning. Would she craft a narrative that redefined her purpose, or would she remain shackled by the shadows of doubt? Julia's fingers hovered over her phone screen, the weight of Mr. Thompson's message exuding a palpable tension. It was more than a question, it was an ultimatum steeped in the possibility of severe consequences that lingered like a storm cloud. She could almost feel the pressure building in her chest, the clash of her instinct to protect her family and her burgeoning desire to reach out and serve others. Taking a steadying breath, she set her jaw, prepared to confront the decision laid before her. The uncertainty loomed, and yet she felt an unexpected thread of resolve threading through her thoughts. Her mind raced. This was her chance to reflect on who she wanted to be, both to herself and to her children. The boy in the booth echoed in her mind, a representation of the many lives that intertwined with her own. With a firm resolve, she replied to Mr. Thompson, "I am ready to face whatever comes next." The response sent a ripple of adrenaline coursing through her. This was a choice, not merely an obligation. She couldn't shake off the feeling that, rather than being pushed down by fear, she was beginning to lift herself up. Almost immediately, the phone buzzed again with a single line, "Meet me tomorrow," followed by an address she knew well, an upscale cafe downtown, a place that felt worlds away from her life. The next day unfolded differently. As she prepared to leave for the cafe, every familiar motion felt laden with significance. She picked out her best clothes from the small collection hanging in her closet, an act of self-affirmation. As she looked in the mirror, she practiced her breathing, forcing herself to drop the hesitation she held onto like a safety net. Arriving at the cafe, the ambience felt alien, chrome and glass around her, reflecting aspirations that felt surreal. Mr. Thompson awaited her, a figure of authority yet cloaked in an air of casual confidence. Suddenly, the din of the cafe drowned out her thoughts. "Julia," he greeted, his voice firm yet warm. "I admire your courage in responding. But bravery always comes with a price. That price wasn't immediately clear. She took a seat across from him, the distance between them charged with anticipation. As Mr. Thompson laid out the details of what he had in mind, trepidation wove through her heart. "I want to challenge you," he continued. "You will receive a grant to fund your vision, your desires to help others, but I will be monitoring every step. Your actions will determine if it becomes a sustainable reality." The gravity of his words hung heavily in the air. He was entrusting her with resources to elevate her community, but the fear of judgment filled the spaces between his sentences. "But how can I trust myself to do this?" she asked, voice steady yet vulnerable. "You need to decide just how much you believe in your capacity to make a difference. If that boy's story resonated with you, you hold the power to change more than just your own life. But first, you have to prove yourself." Each word sliced through Julia's apprehension, revealing the sparse truths she had buried deep. She faltered for just a moment, wrestling with the idea of inadequacy and the voice reminding her of her failures. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a glimmer of belief shimmered faintly. "I accept," she declared, the conviction reverberating. As they shook hands, a thrill rushed through her veins. This was more than a mere act, it was a promise, a commitment not just to herself, but to others who shared her struggles. In that moment, a door opened within her, one she had long left ajar, exposing potential she had yet to uncover, but even as her heart raced with newfound hope, a nagging question settled in the back of her mind: what if she faltered? What if the stakes were greater than she could handle? With every decision ahead, Julia now understood that the challenge wasn't just about the resources or the future, it was about exploring the depth of her capability. As she stepped back into the busy streets, determined to begin her mission, the question emerged once more: could she redefine not only her life but the very lives reliant on her kindness? The horizon stretched before her, filled with possibilities and risks, and she felt fear begin to shift into fervor, but the heart of the matter lingered like a shadow, poised to reveal itself at the most unexpected moment. Would she truly harness the courage she had just summoned, or would the weight of expectation prove too much to bear? The sun poured through the window as Julia walked briskly through her neighborhood, each step pulsing with anticipation. She had left the cafe with a resolve that settled heavily in her chest, not as a burden but as a fire igniting within. The grant was not just money, it was a pathway leading away from mere survival into a dimension rich with possibility. Her mind raced, weaving through ideas and strategies she had previously brushed aside, all while battling the whisper of self-doubt. What should her first step be? Should she organize a community meeting, gather input from others, or even propose a smaller initiative to gauge interest? The options sprawled before her, yet she felt tethered, as if standing on a precipice, afraid to leap. As she approached her old neighborhood cafe, where she'd worked for years, nostalgia washed over her. The laughter of regular customers echoed in her ears, figures that felt like a life she had almost outgrown. But there, in that moment, she saw the potential for connection, both to her past and her future. Stepping inside, the familiar scent of brewing coffee and baked pastries enveloped her. She felt exposed, an imposter among familiar faces. Julia squared her shoulders. Seeing Clara, her former manager, seated at the corner booth, drew her closer. Their eyes met, and Clara's smile radiated warmth. "Julia! You're back!" Clara exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "Sort of," Julia chuckled, a hint of shyness creeping in. "I actually wanted to talk to you about something." They moved to a quieter area, and Julia explained her venture, the grant, and her vision, a community space where stories could be shared. The words flowed easily, igniting passion in her voice. Clara leaned in, nodding appreciatively. "What do you need, Julia?" Clara asked sincerely. "I guess I need a place to start. Maybe your insight on how to engage the community effectively." "Absolutely," Clara replied immediately. "I have a network of contacts who may be willing to support you. Plus, we can host brainstorming sessions here. I'll help you spread the word." As they spoke, Julia's confidence blossomed. The conversation sparked ideas she hadn't considered: the importance of nurturing a sense of belonging before attempting anything grand. Amidst the clinking of cups and soft conversations, as Clara agreed to help her with logistics, Julia recognized the transformative aspect of collaboration. But amidst the excitement, something niggled in the back of her mind: the need to have everything perfectly arranged before she shared her ambitions more widely. She had always played it safe, wanting to avoid failure at any cost. What if her efforts weren't well received? What if she stumbled in front of her community? No more second-guessing, Julia, she whispered to herself, as the conversation with Clara shifted into a planning session. They sketched a soft outline for initial meetings, ways to gather community feedback, and what resources would be necessary. If she truly wanted to ignite change, she knew she had to embrace the rawness of embarking on a new journey, imperfections included. With each decision to share, she embraced not only her aspirations but also an authentic connection with her neighbors, one that fostered vulnerability amid strength. Later that evening, as she sat at home surrounded by the fading daylight, Julia reflected on the day's exchanges. The conversations reshaped her perception into one of hope and possibility, carving a newfound sense of identity rooted in purpose. She felt more than a waitress stepping into a different world. She was beginning to define herself as a connector, a nurturer, but the question of self-doubt lingered like an unwelcome shadow, reminding her that she still had a long way to go to prove herself not to others, but to the fierce spirit she was now nurturing within. She opened her laptop, ready to outline her next steps more clearly. Before she could sink into the intricate details, an unexpected notification buzzed, a message from Mr. Thompson: "Are you ready for the first challenge?" Her breath caught in her throat, anticipation fleetingly steeped in anxiety. The stakes were now palpable, and the answer mattered. Would she rise to this new unforeseen challenge or retreat into the safety of what she knew? The moment hung heavily in the air, her heart racing as she prepared to confront a test that could define her journey ahead. Julia stared at her laptop, the message from Mr. Thompson pulsing on the screen. "Are you ready for the first challenge?" It was a simple query, yet laden with significance and expectation. Her heart thrummed, a mix of excitement and doubt spiraling within. What kind of challenge did he have in mind? Was it another test of her resolve, or perhaps a task that would push her outside her comfort zone? Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes, envisioning her purpose: a community space that would allow voices to resonate and stories to thrive. She knew she needed to confront this challenge head-on, for every step she took was a building block towards what she had envisioned. She composed her response, typing each word with affirming intent, consciously choosing to affirm her readiness. "Yes, I'm ready." The minutes after sending the message felt interminable, each tick of the clock echoing in her mind, amplifying her tension. Finally, her phone chimed. "Meet me tomorrow at the cafe. Bring your best ideas." With a mix of anticipation and anxiety, Julia spent the rest of the evening brainstorming fervently. She scribbled down ideas for community engagement projects, workshops to explore creativity, forums on common challenges, even art installations that reflected local stories. Each concept filled her with a sense of purpose. This was her chance not just to lead, but also to listen. Morning broke clear and bright. Julia arrived at the cafe earlier than usual, feeling the weight of the day pressing against her. Setting up her notes on the table, she grappled with a sense of unease. What if her ideas fell flat? What if she couldn't communicate her vision effectively to Mr. Thompson? As she waited, she observed the cafe bustling with its morning rush. The warmth of the regulars, the soft hum of conversation, and the aroma of fresh coffee reminded her of why she was setting out on this journey. Clarity punctured her trepidation, shoving aside thoughts with a single deep commitment: the community deserved this. Mr. Thompson arrived, his demeanor exuding confidence and gravitas. As they locked eyes, Julia felt a spark of responsibility ignite within her. She greeted him with a firm handshake. "Thank you for meeting with me. Let's dive in," he said, pulling a notebook from his bag. As he settled in, Julia began articulating her ideas, her voice gaining volume as she described the vision she had cultivated. She spoke about fostering a sense of belonging, utilizing local talent, and building connections between neighbors. Each point she made seemed to resonate with him. After her presentation, a moment of silence lingered. Mr. Thompson looked thoughtful, considering her proposals. Then he said, "You've got a lot of great ideas here, Julia. But tell me, what is your biggest fear about embarking on this?" The question struck deeper than she expected. She hesitated, feeling exposed as she revealed her vulnerability. "Honestly, I fear failure. I don't want to let anyone down, especially those who believe in me." He considered her words before responding. "Embrace that fear, it's what makes you human. But understanding it doesn't mean you let it control you. You can channel that vulnerability into a strength." His words cut through the noise in her mind, piercing through the fog of anxiety and self-doubt that often clouded her judgment. Perhaps he was right. Maybe facing that fear could catalyze her growth. Inspired, Julia elaborated further on her ideas. For the first time, she felt a transformative energy in her words, igniting her passion as Mr. Thompson nodded, his interest piqued. As the meeting wrapped up, a sense of accomplishment surged through her veins. She had confronted not only the challenge before her but also the fear that had loomed large. "Tomorrow, we'll discuss funding pathways," Mr. Thompson announced as they parted ways. "Be ready with more detailed plans." Heart racing, Julia watched him leave. The reality settling in this was just the beginning. With fresh determination, she returned home, eager to refine her ideas and prepare for the next hurdle. As night fell, the glow of her laptop illuminated her face. She opened a new document, crafting a list. Every encounter would propel her closer to her dreams. The analytical side of her kicked in. Essential deadlines, potential partnerships, and resources became a canvas of logistical possibilities, but in the quiet stillness of her room, the earlier fear began to resurface, lurking as she stared at a daunting blank page. Was she truly capable of scaling these heights? The journey had only just begun, and with it, the potential for failure loomed large, but just as quickly, a resolve asserted itself. She had already taken the plunge. There was no turning back now. How far could she push the boundaries of her capabilities? How much could she grow from this experience? With a deep breath, she began typing furiously, ready to seize the opportunity that lay ahead, knowing the next day could unleash a wave of challenges she hadn't yet anticipated. The thrill of uncertainty surged again, and she welcomed it. What awaited her beyond this unfolding narrative? The unraveling excitement of new revelations or the confrontation of personal limits? Only tomorrow would tell. Julia awakened with the first light, a sense of urgency thrumming within her veins. Today marked a crucial pivot point in her venture, an opportunity to solidify her aspirations into concrete proposals. She had committed to not only presenting her ideas to Mr. Thompson but ensuring that each one exuded clarity and feasibility. As she sat at her kitchen table, a mug of coffee steaming beside her, doubt began to creep in. The potential for failures loomed shadowy in the corners of her mind. Why did she feel this pang of inadequacy? Surely, others had faced similar challenges. Yet, they hadn't felt the intimate sting of her own self-imposed expectations. It wasn't just about pitching ideas, it was about justifying her place among those who had more experience, more connections, more everything. With a firm grip on her coffee mug, she inspected her prepared materials again. The worksheets scattered before her boasted creative initiatives, but hollow echoes of self-doubt lingered. Was she merely an idealist? Julia scrutinized her notes, noticing something vital was missing: her voice, the deeper motivations behind each initiative. She needed not only to demonstrate her ideas but also to convey the passion that fueled them. Driven by a fierce need to refine her vision, Julia dove back into her notes, reworking and revising. Each line she crafted took on a renewed depth as she integrated her personal stories and convictions. These were not just abstract concepts, they were reflections of herself and her lifelong aspirations. The clock ticked toward her meeting time with Mr. Thompson, both exciting and nerve-wracking. Arriving at the cafe, she felt a familiar blend of anticipation and dread enveloping her. She took comfort in the aroma of brewing coffee that wafted through the air. Would sharing this part of herself make a difference? When Mr. Thompson sat down with her, she quickly sensed the gravity of the moment. He seemed as engaged as before but with a different intensity, as if he were preparing to hold her accountable for what she would present. "Let us see what you've refined," he prompted, opening his notebook, ready to listen. Julia inhaled deeply, summoning the confidence that had eluded her. As she spoke, her ideas flowed more naturally, tethered by the emotional truths she had woven into her proposals. She articulated not just what she planned to do, but why it mattered, grounded in her experiences. Halfway through, she noticed Mr. Thompson leaning in, absorbing her every word. This was different. She was no longer just describing programs. She was sharing a part of herself, a narrative that resonated beyond mere logistics. The realization washed over her like waves crashing on the shore. She was not only pitching ideas, she was inviting him into her vision. But then came the inevitable question, typical of his probing nature: how do you intend to address potential setbacks? What will you do when things don't go according to plan? The question hit her raw, a reminder of her fears that still lurking like dark clouds ready to eclipse her burgeoning confidence. It was a prompt that could lead to self-doubt or a defining moment of reassurance. Taking a moment, she steadied herself and replied, "If I face setbacks, I will reflect. I've learned that adaptability is crucial. Each challenge is not a failure but an opportunity to reassess and innovate." Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her evolved perspective. "And how do you plan to instill that adaptability in your initiatives?" He was testing her, and it felt like an initiation. Julia knew she had to articulate not just answers but a philosophy. "I want to build a culture of resilience. By bringing diverse voices to the forefront, we can pivot together. Collaboration fosters innovation, and that's how we will evolve." His nod of approval fueled her further. This was her moment, a moment not of perfection but of transformative growth, of calling forth her authentic self. Here, she wasn't just a waitress with dreams, she was a leader, articulating a new vision. As they finished the discussion, Julia felt strengthened. She was no longer held captive by her fears but instead empowered by them. Mr. Thompson's reassurances gave her momentum to push forward. Before parting, he added, "We'll also need to touch on communication strategies for outreach. I expect you to lead with unity in mind." Julia's heart raced again. The stakes were rising, and ever so subtly, the narrative was shifting. What would unyielding leadership demand of her? How much would she need to confront the more complex aspects of not just her plans, but her own motivations and relationships? Today may have closed a chapter, but it had opened a door to something deeper, a confrontation not just with the plans ahead, but with herself. As she left the cafe, the pulse of determination coursed through her, yet uncertainty lingered. She had a mission ahead, but the path promised treacherous insights and formidable learning. What resistance awaited her in the weeks to come as she stepped into this leadership role? The anticipation of challenges loomed just ahead, rideable destiny waiting for her response. The following morning brought no reprieve from the rising tide of Julia's responsibility. With Mr. Thompson's directive still echoing in her mind, she scoured her notes again, making meticulous adjustments to her outlines and bullet points. Having absorbed his challenge to address communication strategies, she quickly realized that the true test wasn't merely in making persuasive speeches or crafting brilliant presentations, it lay in her ability to connect authentically with others. But how? Julia felt the anxiety curl around her like a vine. She had spent years honing her ideas, but now she needed to contextualize them within a broader narrative, engaging diverse audiences, and steering them toward a shared goal. The world of leadership demanded more than passionate convictions, it demanded the wisdom to transform ideas into cohesive action plans, crafted through collaboration and understanding. Doubt resurfaced, an insistent whisper. Would she be able to convey the urgency of her vision without losing the essence of why it mattered? The thought was suffocating. It was time to confront her imposter syndrome head-on. Julia opened a new document and titled it Audience Understanding. Under it, she began outlining profiles of the stakeholders involved in her initiatives, individuals with unique backgrounds, experiences, and most importantly, perspectives. Who held the power? What motivated them? Understanding their narratives would arm her with the tools to bridge the gaps in communication. As she wrote, she rediscovered fragments of deep-seated wisdom rooted in her experience as a waitress. Daily, she had encouraged connection, not just serving food but reading people, gauging their moods, and engaging them in conversation. Those moments had woven a narrative of empathy that she could draw upon now. Driven by this realization, she created a strategy centered around the concept of storytelling. People connected with stories, not statistics. The data could underline her proposals, but it was the humanity behind her mission that would resonate. Julia felt her resolve solidify. After an hour of focused brainstorming, she had sketched out a workshop plan for the team, an interactive experience aimed at enhancing communication skills. It would involve role-playing scenarios based on real-life challenges and fostering discussions around conflicts and resolutions. The very thought electrified her. It was not merely about presenting but about creating a dynamic space for dialogue. Emboldened, she reached for her phone and sent a text to Mr. Thompson, inviting him for a brief discussion about her ideas. Would he be interested in testing her framework before rolling it out more broadly? She felt a flutter of nerves but knew that taking this step was pivotal. Late that afternoon, Mr. Thompson accepted. He arrived at her apartment, immediately absorbing the vibrant energy she had created. Laying out her proposal, Julia observed him closely, gauging his reactions. His eyebrows knitted together in concentration while occasionally nodding as she explained the nuances of interactivity. "Julia, this is impressive," he admitted after a silent pause. "But tell me, how do you foresee resistance? Will everyone embrace this model?" Her heart raced. She had anticipated challenges, but articulating them made them tangible. "I expect initial reluctance, Mr. Thompson. Change is often met with skepticism. However, I believe that if I demonstrate the effectiveness of collaboration through our sessions, people will begin to see the value in collective effort." Mr. Thompson's gaze shifted to the window, weighed down by his thoughts. Where will the pushback likely come from? Probably from those who feel their authority is threatened. Some may see these workshops as undermining their role, Julia replied, her voice steady even as tension buzzed within her. He nodded slowly, considering her words. "Then what will your plan be to counter that?" In that moment, everything crystallized for Julia. Instead of positioning the workshops as a challenge to authority, I will pivot the narrative to emphasize collaboration as a way to enhance existing roles. This isn't about diminishing anyone's contribution but amplifying it. I want everyone to understand their importance and how they fit into a larger vision. Mr. Thompson smiled, impressed. That's the kind of leader I want to support. Encouraged, Julia felt a surge of confidence. Perhaps she was indeed capable of more than she had imagined. The merging of her waitress insights with her emerging leadership style was becoming more defined than ever. Yet as their meeting wrapped up, another realization dawned on her. She couldn't overlook the emotional components of these changes. She would need to cultivate emotional intelligence, a skill beyond analytical strategies, to navigate the interpersonal dynamics of her team. Where could she learn this? The question throbbed like an unexplored path in her mind, full of promise and challenge. As Mr. Thompson left, Julia couldn't help but feel the weight of her burgeoning responsibilities and the journey ahead. What new challenges awaited her as she sought out deeper insights into emotional intelligence? Would she rise to the occasion, or would this endeavor push her past the limits she had so carefully constructed? With each passing day, the weight of her responsibilities grew heavier, yet so did Julia's resolve. She found herself distracted by a constant undercurrent of curiosity about emotional intelligence. What did it truly mean to lead with empathy? How could she integrate this capacity into her burgeoning leadership role? Determined to find answers, Julia turned to books and online courses, sifting through resources on emotional intelligence. She learned that it was more than just understanding feelings, it was about harnessing those feelings for herself and others. A concept emerged in her readings that resonated deeply: the ability to recognize emotional cues and respond thoughtfully, rather than react impulsively. That realization tethered her to the idea of becoming a beacon of support for her team, instead of merely a figure of authority. However, studying from the pages of a book was different. She would need practical experience to claim mastery over such a nebulous skill. Julia wondered how to practice this newfound understanding without inviting disaster. Her first test came sooner than she expected. During a scheduled team meeting, the atmosphere was tense, charged with an unease that weighed on everyone's shoulders. As Julia entered the room, she noticed Gary, one of the oldest team members, sitting with his arms crossed, a storm brewing in his gray eyes. Before Julia could even open her mouth to greet the team, he challenged her directly. "So, this is the collaboration you've been preaching? I don't see anyone here willing to give up their control." Julia's stomach twisted, but she took a deep breath. "I appreciate your honesty, Gary. Can we talk about that?" Instead of escalating the argument, she engaged with him, inviting others into the conversation. As they discussed, Julia carefully observed how emotions played out in the room. She noted Gary's expression soften after several teammates chimed in to support his perspective. He wasn't simply resistant, he was afraid of being marginalized. Realizing their shared vulnerability was essential to building a rapport, she leaned into emotional intelligence. "Collaboration can feel like a threat," Julia posited gently. "But what if we redefine our roles together? I want to empower everyone, including you, to feel strengthened in what you offer." To her surprise, as she spoke, she saw the tension ease across the table. It occurred to Julia that people often needed reassurance, they needed to feel heard. After the meeting, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she packed enough empathy to allow for a transformative shift in the team's dynamics. However, the test didn't end there. That evening, as Julia reflected on the day's confrontation, she wrestled with an uncomfortable feeling simmering beneath her skin. Was she truly ready to be a leader who could reconcile differing opinions within her team? These thoughts chased each other in her mind as she attempted to focus on her coursework. She knew she had made a significant connection with her team, but the fear of alienating someone lingered. Would Gary, for instance, genuinely embrace the collaborative model, or would he continue to resist silently, eroding the trust she had worked so hard to build? It was a heavy question, yet one she needed to confront to fully step into her role. Her mind wandered back to Mr. Thompson's words: "True leadership is stepping into the fray and encountering resistance head-on." Julia realized it was time for an even bolder step forward. She resolved to schedule one-on-one feedback sessions with each of her team members, particularly Gary. She wanted to delve deeper into their individual perspectives, find out what they were truly worried about, and how she could help. As she mapped out her plan, fresh anxiety rippled through her. Would opening these channels of communication unravel the support she had created, or would it solidify it? With her heart pounding, Julia understood that she was venturing into uncharted territory, the pursuit of not just knowledge of emotional intelligence, but its embodiment. The moment spent uncovering her team's deeper emotions stirred a curiosity that ignited a question within her: what if she discovered not just her team's vulnerabilities, but her own? As she prepared for the challenge ahead, Julia felt the very fibers of her self-respect weave together into something stronger. The door to her office swung shut, sealing her in a moment of determination. She was ready to face the next set of challenges that would arise from her conversations. But as the time ticked away toward the first of those pivotal meetings, a nagging uncertainty remained. How would her own emotions and fears shape those interactions? Julia awoke the next day with a sense of purpose edging out her lingering fears. Each one-on-one meeting felt monumental, an opportunity to break down barriers and build trust, yet also a daunting threat to her hard-won progress. She moved through the morning routine with her mind running rampant, dissecting her approach. What if her efforts to connect ended up highlighting her shortcomings instead? As she took her first sip of coffee, a jolt of anxiety coursed through her, but she shut it down. This was about growth, and discomfort often led to breakthroughs. The first scheduled meeting was with Marco, an enthusiastic teammate whose buoyant spirit often masked a tendency to overcommit. As he settled into the chair across from her, Julia noticed the eagerness in his eyes, yet there was an undercurrent of apprehension. She chose to start gently. How are you feeling about our recent discussions on collaboration? Marco leaned forward, his hands fidgeting on the table. Honestly, Julia, I've been feeling left out. I know I can take on too much sometimes, but I want to contribute in ways that matter. His honesty was a gift, yet it was unnerving. How could Julia assure him that his voice mattered, especially when her own insecurities loomed large? Listening to him, Julia found herself parsing through her blending thoughts, her strategy to elicit feelings while managing her own anxiety. You're valued here, Marco. But I also want to ensure your contributions align with what you want. How can we make that balance work? As they discussed, she urged him to articulate his visions for collaboration. Each suggestion Marco shared felt like a thread weaving into a larger tapestry, giving her insights into his perspective. Yet, through her engagement, an uncomfortable realization surfaced: she was approaching these meetings wearing a mask, trying hard to embody a confident leader while grappling with feelings of inadequacy. When the meeting wrapped up, Marco left with renewed energy, yet Julia felt hollow. Was her performance a facade? Could she genuinely connect if she was navigating her own uncertainties? The next few meetings unfolded in similar fashion. With each conversation, Julia cautiously reframed her leadership vision in a way that embraced the vulnerabilities of her team. Each member brought unique perspectives and buried concerns. Matthew expressed exhaustion, Linda talked about workplace dynamics that left her feeling isolated. In these discussions, Julia became more attuned to the nuances affecting morale. Yet, with every extracted insight, she also encountered the anchor of her worries. What if revealing her own fears could bring them closer? The notion was both exhilarating and terrifying. On the one hand, sharing her vulnerabilities could show strength; on the other, it risked opening vulnerabilities that could undermine her authority. As she approached her meeting with Gary, her heart raced in sync with her thoughts. Julia had decided to acknowledge her own struggles with the leadership expectations she had taken on and how they impacted her. That connection could be the very alignment everyone needed for authentic collaboration. With a determined breath, she knocked on his door, preparing to unveil her truth in pursuit of fostering a deeper connection. Just as she stepped inside, Gary's unyielding gaze met hers, the tension palpable. The time had come to face not just his fears, but her own. Julia stepped into the room and greeted Gary, her heart pounding as she prepared to confront what had felt like an insurmountable challenge. Today was more than a meeting, it was a moment to bridge the gap of silence that had loomed between them. She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts as his arms crossed tighter beneath a furrowed brow. Gary, she said, her voice steady, I want to have an open conversation with you to understand your feelings about our new direction and, if I may, to share a bit of my own journey in this role. His eyes narrowed, and Julia felt the walls that surrounded her resolve begin to tremble. Still, she pressed on. I recognize that there might be a lot of skepticism about collaboration, she continued. I share those feelings too. Sometimes, I battle with self-doubt and the fear of not measuring up to what this team expects from me. But I believe vulnerability can create space for understanding. What are your concerns? For a moment, silence stretched across the air, thick with unspoken tension. His posture softened slightly, and she could see curiosity flickering to life beneath that stoic exterior. Finally, he spoke. You talk about collaboration, Julia, but how do we really know we can depend on one another? What if this ends up just shifting responsibilities without results? Julia nodded, seeing the depth of his concern. You're right. Dependability is earned. If we want to reshape our culture, we need to actively participate in building trust together. I'm asking you to join me in facing those fears and to openly discuss what collaboration looks like on a practical level. As the meeting progressed, the charged atmosphere began to shift. Gary engaged, sharing his thoughts and frustrations, his voice rising and falling with newfound passion. Julia listened intently, reflecting on each point he made while piecing together how their expertise could align in practice. In this dialogue, Julia discovered something significant: not just validation from his insights but also a mirrored experience. As she opened up, she found herself releasing the burden of perfection. It felt like a pivotal moment, as if chains had slipped away, allowing her to reclaim her voice not only as a leader but as an individual navigating a shared expedition. By the end of their meeting, Gary stood up, his features softened. "Thank you for being real with me," he said. "I appreciate that you're willing to be vulnerable too. I think we can make this work." Julia smiled, an authentic warmth washing over her, confirmation that connection had been forged. It was a tangible victory, one that redefined their relationship and opened a path for renewed trust throughout the team. As she left his office, she felt lighter, grounded by their shared honesty. In the weeks following, Julia dedicated herself to fostering communication within the team, unveiling the true power of careful listening and collaborative action. Weekly brainstorming sessions sparked the creative energy within her colleagues, initiatives transformed from concepts into thriving projects. Each waiting moment held promise as ideas flourished, and their roles began to weave into a cohesive tapestry of community empowerment. One day, as they celebrated the successful launch of the community workshop program, Julia stood before the team, surrounded by the energy of enthusiasm and dedication. Their commitment warmed the room, and she reflected on how far they had come together. "Thank you, everyone, for believing in this journey and each other," Julia began, her voice steady yet filled with growing confidence. "We've achieved so much in such a short time, and it's only the beginning because we relied on each other. Together, we are building something powerful beyond our individual capabilities." As cheers erupted around her, she felt a wave of gratitude and fulfillment. It wasn't just the success of the workshops, it was the realization that she had transformed into a leader grounded in genuine connection and resilience. In those collective moments, Julia had not only risen above her self-doubt, it had ignited within her an unwavering conviction. And as she gazed around the room filled with hope, she knew this was her achievement, owning her narrative, connecting with others at a deep level, and fostering a community that could thrive together. With a newfound commitment to elevating her community, Julia ventured on, believing in transformation, both hers and those she served. She had achieved not just a vision but a reality marked by trust, connection, and engagement. This was not merely a conclusion, it was the glorious beginning of her story as a leader transformed, solid in her confidence and purposeful in her mission. Now, more than ever, embrace your own journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Julia's inspiring transformation. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and be inspired.